It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Samantha Leonard. Has been in the dental industry for 15 years. She has worked every role, worn every hat, and mastered all the traits that eventually led her to become an operational manager with a well-respected and world-renowned orthodontist, Dr. Sam Daher, who we've had on the show. Together, they started and built a multi-million-dollar practice from scratch and expanded to 6 locations across the country. Her managerial experience has helped her appreciate and identify the negative effect of a wrong hire, lack of systems, and the adverse impact on team dynamic, quality of customer service, lost time, and wasted money. She is passionate about helping the dental community find and build their dental dream and establish effective HR programs that will create the office culture that will take their practice to the next level. Offload the burden of HR management to Stream Dental HR and enjoy the peace of mind that comes from knowing your employment practices are compliant and handled by experienced HR professionals who are friendly, eager to provide assistance, and always have your best interests in mind. Virtual HR departments allow your HR clients range in size from 3 employees to 250 employees, relying on them for both strategic and operational HR support. The virtual HR department can be customized to meet the needs of your business and growth plan. Spending too much time on HR and not on your business, they can fix that. Offload the burden of HR to Stream Dental HR and enjoy the peace of mind that comes from knowing your employment practices are compliant, best in class, and handled by experienced HR professionals who are friendly, eager to provide assistance, and always have your best interests in mind. This is not a commercial. I asked her to come on the show. She didn't ask me. In fact, she said she would never go on a podcast that would have Sam on before. And so, but I convinced her just to do it. Can you right the wrong of Sam Dahar's podcast and make him look good? You know, and this HR, it's kind of it's getting more complicated. It's a subtle. It's like that boiling frog. Like they just outlawed menthol cigarettes because they're not good for you. And the number one disease in America are heart disease, high blood pressure, all these things like that. I mean, what are they coming after next? The Big Mac? I mean, it's individual liberty and freedom versus some government control. And when I think of HR, I think of all the insane things the government has done of taking away the personal freedom. Like, if you don't like this job, quit and go get another one. I mean, the first 200,000 years of Sapien, there was no companies, governments, or jobs. You just took care of yourself. The first several thousand years of this country, everybody was completely independent. If I was up there in Alberta, Canada, like you, we'd just be eating a moose sandwich right now. But now, you know, the do-gooder governments on their slow strangulation of the society, I can't imagine. So you got the big old government, which is hard to find anything they've done right in 5,000 years, versus the unlimited complications of the human condition. I mean, humans are wild. I love root canals and fillings and crowns. My favorite is popping out 4 wisdom teeth. But then you listen to HR issues and you listen to people and you think, okay, she's smart. She's gone to high school. She's been in dentistry for 10 years. And I mean, none of this makes sense.
Yeah.
So my sad thing to tell you, I hate starting a podcast with, I'd almost rather be a pediatric dentist than an HR person. I mean, I think pediatric dentistry
somebody's
is
got to
rock
do it,
bottom.
right?
Yeah. So how did you get interested in figuring out how to manage a team when humans are like herding cats?
Well, I think, like you said, it's really difficult right now for business owners. They're juggling so many different things, and now we have COVID in the mix, and it's increased like health and safety regulations. We've got mental illness and wellness now that we need to juggle all of these pieces while trying to lead your team, while trying to grow your business, trying to be compliant. Like, there's just so many things that practice owners have to take care of right now. So we wanted to create this to really help offload those pieces for practice owners so that they can get back to what they love doing. Like you said, popping out those 4 wisdom teeth, that's your zone of genius. And so that's where we want to help practice owners get into this. And really, it came from my experience of starting off as a dental assistant. I did that for 5 years. Dr. Dar hired me to start his satellite practice as an Invisalign only clinic. And I was employee 0. So my background basically was the same as yours, was dentistry, was teeth, creating beautiful smiles. And now I'm managing a team. I'm leading a business. I'm trying to grow it. And I made a lot of mistakes along the way, humbling mistakes, but realized that I didn't know anything about HR, and now I'm dealing with it. And there wasn't really much support systems for me here in Canada. So that's where we kind of took it upon ourselves to really help our industry out, because I wasn't the only one who was losing sleep and regretting coming to work and, having to deal with who knows what I've got to deal with. And somebody quit and now I've got to hire, and just all the things that really kind of could potentially take that joy or burn out a manager or an owner. So that's kind of what inspired all of this.
But he's over in Vancouver, British Columbia, and you're the next province over in Alberta. So how were you ground zero with that?
So he would fly in 4 days a month to see patients. And so basically he'd fly into downtown Calgary. I'd have a fully booked schedule for him of new consults and treatments. So basically I was the marketer, treatment coordinator, dental assistant, receptionist. I was employee one. And basically we grew that into a multi-million-dollar clinic in less than a year. And then we just continued expanding that same flagship, so to speak, and replicating that over and over in different practices in different cities.
Invisalign, there's just no question the data is clear that the only two segments of the dental industry that's been growing double digit for the last decade are clear aligners and implants. I mean, if you're coming out of school, $400,000 in student loans, and you think you're going to pay this off with buccal pick composites and Profies, you might think again, but clear aligners, I mean, why do you think they're so big? Why do you think Canada, why were you able to build $1 million practice so fast for Invisalign in Calgary?
Well, to kind of paint the picture and give you a little bit of background. So the practice that Dr. Dar purchased basically was right in the heart of downtown. And so the patients and the demographic that we were dealing with were all executives, VPs, like oil and gas moguls, people who wanted beautiful smiles, but didn't want to have braces. And so when Dr. Dar took that practice over and just, basically started with the promotion of Invisalign, and with his expertise and specialization in being top 1% Invisalign provider, we were able to attract really, really great patients. And, we created some great systems that were scalable. And then it was just easy for us to know who we needed to hire, plug them in with the right procedures and processes. And then we were able to just essentially replicate that over and over again in different cities.
So, make no doubt about it. I mean, Alberta, Canada found the largest oil deposit ever. And I don't like to talk about religion, sex, politics, and violence, but what you said was that the Invisalign market was high paid executives, and if they weren't directly in the oil industry, they're probably in a lot of support industries, legal, restaurants, hotels. You have that one primary industry, then everything is affected by it. And the United States the new administration just canceled the Keystone Pipeline. What is that going to mean when you're a dentist in Alberta and you read macroeconomic international news like that affects your home province? How do you react to that? First of all, what's your reaction? Do you think it'll have an economic impact on your Invisalign starts?
It for sure it did, definitely, because we've been dealing with this for probably about like 6-7 years now. When the oil prices kind of plummeted significantly. Of course, there were a lot of layoffs that impacted the, clientele who are downtown who are now working from home. So we just had to adapt, and we had to switch our marketing tactics. We had to switch, now we're taking insurance, or now we created payment plans. So we definitely had to pivot. And I think a lot of practices had to deal with that right now with COVID, right? We had overnight, our life changed, our business changed. We had to lay off our team. We had to deal with situations that we've never had to deal with. And so a lot of practices really had to pivot. And I think a lot of the things as well that we really noticed over COVID is that the one aspect where maybe wasn't being given a lot of attention to when it came to HR and managing your people and leadership, those were the biggest complications and the biggest holes and the biggest problems that they had to deal with during this time. So I think the moral of the story right now is just really businesses have to be prepared to to change, whether that's things that are outside of our control or things that are inside of our control. We need to make sure that we have the business strategy, we have the right people on the bus, and we have those processes and procedures just to really plug and play to really help us get through whatever scenario or situation that comes our way.
So when did you notice a contraction?
With the oil and gas?
With the Invisalign cases, you said you've been. The new president just did this, but when did you see a hit?
Well, I think for sure for us was, I think 6, 7 years ago when oil and gas really impacted our economy here, our little bubble here in Calgary. That's where we kind of noticed that a lot of patients were, they lost their benefits, they lost their job. So there were a little bit, that desire to have beautiful smile kind of was put on the back burner until they were able to have an income again and get back to normal, so to speak. And so that's where we noticed that. But then, Dr. Dar is a resilient, adaptable man. And so we definitely shifted our gears to be able to change, to adapt to those changes.
Do you now find your office having excess parking spots because now that the pipeline's been canceled, all the environmentalists quit driving their SUVs and cars and start walking and riding their bicycles and changing their own personal behavior? Did you notice any of that? Yeah.
Yeah.
That won't happen. So basically, how do you think the Invisalign ortho market looks now, though, going forward after the canceling of the pipeline and for the rest of 2021 and the finishing out year 2 of the pandemic and all that? How does business look?
Yeah, I think for many of our clients, they definitely had a little blimp in our time frame, on our little bubble, right? And I think all of us experienced that. And many of them kind of changed their approach. So now instead of kind of focusing on a ton of money, maybe for marketing, maybe they kind of limited that and they kind of went more internal, seeing what kind of internal referrals can we create? How can we create an Invisalign night where we can have invite a ton of our patients and their friends or family to come to these and get a consultation and learn a little bit more about Invisalign? Or let's host a workshop. Like, there was just different approaches that they took to be able to see how can I market with a limited resource right now and reach more people. And I think a lot of people as well were utilizing social media because that's a great free platform, great free resource to educate people. People were home, they were watching, and they were on their phones much more often. And so I think right now there's a lot of practices and businesses that are recovering. They're restoring to what they used to be. I'm not operational manager anymore, but I still wear that hat very often when I'm helping and consulting with our clients on the operational side of their business. But right now, I think practices are, pivoting. They're making those changes and seeing what works and what doesn't.
You actually, the best dental marketer in the world's actually right where you live in Alberta, Canada. He's up in Red Deer, Michael Zach. When he bought John Lennon's tooth at an auction, from the maid had kept the tooth. I mean, there's no metric in all of dental advertising of all time that got that many hits. I mean, that story went around the world, every single country. I think every single country was clicking into that, buying John Lennon's tooth. And what's funny about that, because he also is world famous for his Confessions of a Cosmetic Dentist, where instead of doing your smile makeover like you and Sam do with orthodontics, I've noticed this since 1987, cringing when I got out of dental school and going to these cosmetic dental classes where, she had a little rotation here, a little rotation here. The next slide is 10 preps on the upper and lower. And, those lower incisors look like little rice kernels. And you're like, oh my God. And he calls veneers venereal disease. I just love the way he does that. And you can always see something's wrong when people treat you in ways they don't want to be treated, and they treat their patients differently than they would treat their own kids. So if you would never do that on your 18 daughter, if your 18-year-old daughter is going to be sent to Sam for orthodontics, Invisalign, bleaching, bonding, but then this lady here, she's getting 20 crowns because all the money, that's the red flag. And kudos to Michael for always willing to speak out and put his neck on the line, because he's made a lot a lot of not so many good friends up there in your province of Alberta. But what does what do you see as the biggest threat from Invisalign? Is I mean, for your business, is it other orthodontists doing it, or is it general dentists doing it, or is it just the economy not producing enough disposable income to get it done? Where do you think the main headwinds come from?
I think, Invisalign is a great product, and with the right training and processes and people in place, it's easy to be able to integrate that into the business and to be able to market that. I think the point where some practices may not be able to capitalize and maximize this in their organization is just really setting their team and their business up for success with this. So if they're not training their team properly, if they're not supporting them with the right resources, if we don't have any metrics to be able to measure and manage to ensure that, hey, we're actually moving in the right direction, maybe there's a few things that we notice that there's a bottleneck or some things have fallen through the cracks. If we're not actually identifying those pieces, then we can start thinking that Invisalign just doesn't work. Right. And then we give up on that. So it's, when a practice owner is really implementing these great resources and these great systems, it's making sure to be able to have that organization, have that team surrounding that, supporting them, giving them that resources and education to help with that. But I think with Invisalign, like the sky's the limit with that. And we've been able to see that successfully within the offices that Dr. Dar and I used to manage and operate. And, it was a great success for us. And now he's continuing to educate and support other practice owners right now around the world and helping them improve in their Invisalign skills.
And it's never going to go away because orthodontics has never been about, oh, I can't chew, I'm shriveling up. I have 3 aunts that died of malnutrition because they had a malocclusion. I mean, 1/3 of Americans are obese, and there's still orthodontists saying you need to do this so you can chew properly. I'm pretty sure there's not any problems chewing in the United States and Canada. It's over chewing. But this Invisalign thing, it's about being prettier. And I'll never forget when I was lecturing in Shenzhen, China, where the president of the Chinese Dental Association was telling me that Chinese women spend 40% of their disposable income just on things that make them look pretty, lipstick and makeup and shoes and just stuff from the beauty sector. 40%, and it's just amazing. And I'll never forget when I used to visit my grandmother, my great grandma, who I think she made it to. I think she missed 100 by 4 months or something like that. And when she'd use the restroom, she'd always still powder puff her face and updo her lipstick. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, I'm a bald man. I had more hair than her. You could tell by her lipstick that she was right-handed because it drew all the way up to the right. I mean, it looked like a scary clown. But in her eyes, she's still chasing the Invisalign beauty at 99 years old. It's unbelievable. A lot of people say things like, well, dentists do this or dentists do that. And I'm always like, wow, show me the report. Show me the data. You got an Excel? And it's always just something that flies out of their rear end. But Dental Town, when you start a post, you can always start a poll. So I've been polling people since 1999. And if you ask a dentist what stresses you out, he might say it's the patients or staff or this. But at the end of the day, it's just people. My homies weren't chosen because of their social skills. They were chosen because of their math, physics, chemistry, and biology skills. And that's a fact. If you get 4 A's in there, you got a chance at med school, dent school. And if you fail those 4, it's not even. So the guy who gets an A in calculus and can still tell you the difference between a sine, a cosine, and a tangent, that's not someone who's going to do a good interview or try to figure out who's at fault. And every office I've been in ever, when the shit hits the fan, the doc always goes in his private office and shuts the door. And then you turn on hockey or NFL. I can't watch hockey because they destroy teeth. I mean, come on, I have to have some values left, right? That's why I support the NFL. But the bottom line is they just don't want to deal with people. And then the ones who really build these amazing offices. All the other dentists figured out, well, it wasn't on quality or continuing ed or because he was Sir Isaac Newton's nephew. It was because he had people skills. He could talk to
Mhm.
the patient, the staff. He just was a natural born leader. And I've
Mhm.
always been wondering, can you make my algebra geometry freak a natural born leader? And what you're doing is you're saying, you're taking the DSO model. Like, look what the DSOs are doing. They're unloading all this non-dental stuff in marketing and HR and legal and accounting, and you just focus on what you went to school to do, which is make beautiful smiles and get people out of
Mhm.
pain. So when you're dealing with HR, these HR issues, what are like the, if I go to McDonald's, it's a Big Mac, Franco. In HR, when you're having problems with staff, what's the Big Mac, Franco? What would the Big Mac, two all beef patties, special cheese, lettuce, sauce on a sesame seed bun, what would that issue be?
Of yeah, I think for when there's usually those headbutting issues, or it all falls down into miscommunication. So, it's always, what is our policies and our principles and our guiding principles for this? Are we all in alignment with that? Do they know what they need to do? Do they understand what's expected of them? What's the accountability process? Have they been talked to? What's the next step? Did you provide them an action plan? Are we following up? What's the feedback? So there's usually kind of that big gap in between the frustration and the disconnects with the employees. And the leadership part is really what is required in order for us to solve that problem and to get through to the other side. So it's really important to make sure that that's why when we're working with practices, we say that HR is much more than an employee handbook, because that, yes, technically is your rule book, our policies, why we do things, how we do things. But most of the time that is only given attention when an employee starts, they read it, they sign off on it, and then it goes and it sits on a shelf and collects dust for years and years and years. But we actually need to be way more proactive, and we need to have a strategy and processes in place to be able to help with every part of that employee life cycle. So from hiring to probationary periods to performance reviews, and having that constant communication, engagement, and those points to be able to make sure that your team understands where we're going, how are we going to get there, and what does every person need to do to be able to help achieve that final outcome. And that's what's really going to make that big difference. So anybody who is in that leadership role, that CEO role, by default, you are now a leader. So that's where most practice owners, when they come out of school, that part wasn't taught. How do I speak to my team? How do I communicate in a way that they're actually going to receive it and understand what I mean, and understand what the value statement of that and what I expect them to do? And that's where we come in to really help practice owners of really having those conversations, identifying what that is, first of all, how to have those conversations. So in that way, we can really resolve those conflicts or prevent them from ever happening.
Wow. um, and by the way, if you're still, a quarter of our viewers are still stuck in dental kindergarten school. When she's saying HR, that stands for human resources. And I can still remember the first time I went to human resources and my first job, and they were out of teeth. Tough. So when you say headbutting issues, let's start there, because I find, when you see everyone tell you A, they tell you that, but then they all do B. You're wondering the disconnect. And I've seen two disconnects on this. One is when people look at the utilization of their fixed costs. There's 168 hours in a week, and an
Mhm.
office is open 32 hours a week. So they're not open 81% of the time. Their rent, mortgage, equipment, build out, computer,
Mhm.
land, building, it's all just sitting there idle. So to maximize that, they try to do extended hours. They increase their utilization of their fixed cost, and they increase more availability. But usually, the nightmare out of that is HR, because now you have a morning staff from 6 to noon and an evening staff from noon to 6. Or you have, we used to have an entirely different staff that just came on Saturday, because I knew I'm in Phoenix. There's got to be a ton of stay-home moms that had babies and everything that just want to get out and work one day a week, and they all said the same thing. I thought it was because they wanted to keep their profession, their job, and all that stuff, and they said, well, I need the money, but what I mostly want is if I'm not there on Saturday, my husband is going to have to take care of the kids and feed them and not just plump down in front of an ESPN and watch sports all day. And every day they came back from their 1 day job, their husband just on his hands and knees, overwhelmed at how difficult this job was. But the trade-off of that is I had all these people on Saturday that weren't there the rest of the week. And it was just, the HR was insane. And these DSO owners, they tell me, they say, in the beginning, we just had these little 6 operatory things, and they were just 1 dentist, 2 hygienists, 2 receptionists, 2 hygienists. And, they were smaller, they're a million, but we didn't have any HR issues because everyone in there's only one 800-pound gorilla to follow, and blah, blah, blah. But when we started expanding the 2 shifts, we did that because if one doctor went down, we had another one that could fill in. So we did it for all these other issues, but our HR issues went through the roof because humans are a herd animal, and the term 800-pound gorilla, we wouldn't have survived 200,000 years if everybody was running 8 different directions. So you had the big daddy gorilla, and if you went the wrong way, you were going to have repercussions. And now you have 2 800-pound gorillas. You got 2 different dentists, and one believes this way and one believes that way, and then the doctor's wife is always an issue, because if doctor says we're going right and the spouse says we're going left, if anytime you say no, they go to the other one and get a yes. I mean, there's simply not an org chart. And then on these partnerships, still they're a joke, because people are selling partnerships, but if you don't have over 50% of the stock, you might as well have a partnership in a unicorn factory. I mean, when you're a 30% minority partner, that's something you might, maybe that makes you feel good, but legally you have nothing. I mean, you literally have nothing. But they market that you're in control. So have you seen HR issues explode more in group practice versus solo?
I would say that it's a tie between the both, because even if you have a skeleton crew, let's say just 1 administrator and 1 assistant, if we don't have the proper leadership, we don't have the right people doing the right things at the right time, that equals to an HR nightmare. As now we have, again, miscommunication, leadership, these expectations that aren't being met. And so that just stirs on more frustration. So, but then once you have a bigger team, it just compounds. Then you have multiple location, that compounds. So that's why it's so important to have those good structures and good communication and good leadership from day one. So in that way, you're building your HR around your business strategy and your growth. So in that way, you can adapt and grow. You've got that next plan. You've got those key performing indicators that they know they need to reach this quarter. So we just have more structure. We've got this game plan, and it's just much easier for everybody. Like you're a fan of NFL. So if we got that game plan and everybody knows what play we're going to make, then the likelihood of actually us reaching a touchdown or whatever the term is, then we're able to do it, right? So it's the same principles that we need to apply within our business. And just having an employee handbook or your policy manual isn't really doing much favor. You're basically, your business is underutilized. We're leaving money on the table. We need to have a business strategy, an intentional HR plan that supports growth.
Well said. And the other thing that I see routinely is, to me, it seems like the employee, I've had employees that lasted 30 years. I got, a dozen right now that have made it 2 decades. That
Wow.
the biggest problem is that that person who's up or down, they're not the same every time you see them. I mean, everyone that's made it 20 years, I mean, every time you interact with them, it's the same Ronald McDonald hamburglar, right? And, you know who's going to show up, and you almost know what they're going to say. They're just very predictable. And it's the same thing that differentiates poor countries from rich countries. I mean, if you ask any economist in one word, what separates the 20 richest countries from the 100 poorest, and they'll just say stability. No one's going to move to a country where it's having war and turmoil, and just they need predictability, at least 5 or 10 years to make an investment, build a factory, all this stuff. And you have people that come in, and 4 days out of 5, they're the nicest, sweetest person in the office, and then the 5th day, Jekyll and Hyde separate, and it just seems like when you know people for a long time, it's like, okay, if he's had a rotten day and he's stressed out of his mind, it's going to be from that batshit crazy Karen, and why doesn't he just fire her? What is the do you see it, the toxic employee? How do you
Mhm.
define the toxic employee, and what to look out for? And are they salvageable, or are they usually just like a bad player on a hockey team? Just trade him out and find someone else.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like you were saying, HR is complex because people are complex. And so we're dealing with multiple different personality types, different behavior, motivation drivers, and styles. And so this is that line that we need to be able to see how do I manage that as the office manager or the owner of the business? How am I going to manage everybody and support everybody? So this is where really having that good definition of what is our office culture, what are the core values that we have, and we want to make sure that we're hiring people who are in alignment with that. So if we're using that when it comes to recruitment, when it comes to our onboarding and hiring, we can easily and hopefully narrow down and weed those people out who aren't going to fit. But let's say there's always those stragglers that somehow just make their way through their toxic personality. And we start to see that their performance starts to go down, their motivation starts to go down, they start to impact other people. Maybe they're starting to pass the buck off to somebody else, or they're starting to either lie about something. Those are big red flags that we know that, if we start to see that things are getting worse or they're compounding, then this isn't the right place for them, because that type of attitude spreads like wildfire very, very quickly. And then all of a sudden, our A players now become C players in other areas of our business. And so we need to make sure, and again, this all falls down to having those HR strategies and functions, is just making sure that when they're not in alignment with that, it's easy for us to identify right away. And we have the right policies and procedures and protocols to show, hey, these are our company expectations. They're not being met. Unfortunately, this isn't a good fit. Because once the rest of the team sees that you're protecting that culture and that great rapport that we have and the great business that we have, then they're going to come to bat for you. They're going to do whatever they can as well to preserve that in the future and really help you preserve that great culture for years to come.
Interesting. You're cutting out at the very end. When you say when you have a problem in a smaller office, it can be a Doberman pincher, and a lot of times the dentist doesn't realize that the fact that he'll work through late lunch or stay at the end of the day, or has great treatment plan present days, whatever. His or her production can overpower that little dog in the corner that's a Doberman. And then they decide they're going to be a multi-location, the next DSO, the next Rick Workman Heartland, and they do a second location. But that dog, now there's two of those dogs, and they start getting bigger. And I've noticed that but the doctor can still muscle. He can jump in his car and drive back and forth and do 60-hour weeks. So usually by the third one, he can't single-handedly Superman this problem. It wasn't fixed in the prototype. People always forget that the McDonald brothers, they spent 10 years before they got their prototype down. And when Ray Kroc got to the door, because they were ordering multi-mixers that made 8 malts at a time, and Ray's like, who the hell's doing that? By the time he went down there and saw the final prototype, he rolled it out across the country. And I just see all of these DSOs, their first rule is to go raise a bunch of money. And then they start buying a bunch of, they don't do de novo setting up their model, which they don't have. They start buying mergers and acquisitions of these older selling doctors who, as soon as they're gone, they're going to be replaced with a bunch of young kids right out of school. And they don't have a model, and it's just a disaster. In fact, nobody has any idea where the economy is going. We're in uncharted territories. 1 in every 4 US dollars around the globe was printed in the last 12 months. You know, people talk about we're at the same level of debt as after World War II. No, World War II, all the people bought war bonds. It was real money being returned, a nickel on a dollar a year. This is just printed counterfeit. I mean, if you and I did this and Sam did it, we'd serve 20 years. And so I don't know what to make of where this is going. But if there is another contraction, I think there's going to be a lot of dental offices put up for sale, and I think building out a brand new dental office right now, I think is you know, I'm sure there's good situations like maybe you're in a small town and it's the only option, but in the big urban cities, I think these things, I think this could get very ugly quick, especially with the ones who never got their business model perfected before they started expanding. And I think I told this so many boys that have given me this idea. I said, okay, well, if I was to loan you $10 million at 10% interest a year, I would guarantee your bankruptcy. You're not ready. You know, you don't have any of your systems in place, and it's just a lot more. You have the biggest DSO around the world in Canada, United Dental Corporation. They're in Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, and now in the United States. How do you see their effectiveness and their business model?
I think what you hit the nail on the head when it came to making sure that they have a business strategy and a business model, because it all goes down if we don't have the direction of what we need to do, when we need to do it, and how we need to do it, then that's when things start to fail. And so, you know, for DSOs that are out there, whether they're here in Canada or down in the US, is they've got that proven model that has worked and has been able to help practices grow. And I think they really support offices that are having that tough time, or maybe they're losing that joy. They're being burnt out in their role, trying to wear many hats. And so I think that is still a great supporting model for those dentists who want to continue doing what they love to do, but just being a dentist, and that's it, and that's all. And so I think, like you were saying, when practices have that business model, that business plan, I think that's what's going to help them be able to adapt and be dynamic. Because, like you were saying, we've seen this biggest shift in this last year within the economy and within business and dentistry altogether, and so many things that are just impacting practices from all around them, and just all these curveballs. And so we just need to have those guiding principles and that business plan to really help us get through the other side. And once we have great team members who are on the bus with us, it's much easier for us to make those pivots and those shifts, and to support this business and really help elevate it. And I think another point that you were mentioning as well is really kind of knowing what, not only what we need to be producing, but how much we're actually spending every single hour that our business is open. Because then we really need to make sure that everybody's doing the right things at the right time. Because if I have Susie, who's maybe our office manager, and she's bogged down with recalls or with insurance, or trying to be an IT person and jumping in the back where needed, that office manager is no longer doing what the business needs and focusing on marketing plans, growth strategies. So that's really stunting our growth. And so when we know how much money we're actually spending every single hour, that's going to help us make the right decisions, so that not only are we producing what we need to be producing per hour, but our team is also doing the top 5 things that are actually going to bring revenue into the business, and really being able to help make sure that the business is making money, and we're not just staying open and nobody's doing what they need to be doing or know what they need to be doing to really help that business thrive.
There was a great poll on Dental Town right now. How much time do you give for lunch? And of course, the majority have voted 1 hour. And same day dentistry is just amazing. And I always, when I was young and dumb and had all that energy, I mean, if someone came in with a toothache and it was 11 o'clock, and by the time you got all diagnosed and worked up, and the fee and the treatment plan and the money's collected and everything, I would just sit down and knock it out during lunch. If it's at the end of the day, I'd say at the end of the day. And in the morning huddle, I'd say, okay, which one of my assistants will cover me if I decide to go through lunch? Which one will stay at the end of the day? But I know other offices where that's considered a form of abuse. I mean, you're an abusive person if you make your staff work through lunch or stay past 5. And it's like, well, a hospital, I mean, if you're having a heart attack and you get there, they don't say, oh, I'm sorry, we're just closing for lunch. I mean, you don't call the fire department and say, my house is on fire. And they go, well, this was not a good time to call. See, we're all going to lunch right now. And you're like, well, my house is on fire. How do you draw the line on same day dentistry and be able to flex and pivot and when you're trying to make your BAM number, your bare ass minimum break even point, BEP, whatever, how do you have a culture of a hospital emergency room and paying walk-ins, overhead, break even, in a staff that if you watch TV and if you watch the governments, they want everything just so perfectly organized and predictable.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, again, it really circles down to the culture, our core values, and it really boils down to teamwork as well and having that communication. So like you were saying, having that conversation at the beginning of the day with the team and go, okay, it looks like from my notes from last time, Mrs. Jones is, she's prime and ready, and we could offer her to do this crown, same day crown. We already know that she's been approved by her insurance. So if she says yes, what's our game plan to be able to do that? It looks like it's going to be over lunch hour. So maybe seeing who can take their lunch hour a little bit early and who can cover that and who can take their lunch hour a little bit later. So we're not taking away lunch hour. We're just kind of moving it around. So in that way, we can make sure that everybody's still taking their mandatory breaks. Everybody's blood sugar level is where it needs to be. We don't have anybody fainting, but then as well, it's covering the business and covering what we need to do to be able to hit those numbers. So I think, like you said, it all goes back to communication. Our goals are having one same day start a day, a week, whatever that seems to be. And then in those team meetings to be able to communicate to see how can we make this goal happen? What are some weaknesses or obstacles that can get in the way? What's our action plan to be able to tackle it? And what's the teamwork that's involved in it for us to be able to make that happen?
Very, very, very nice. I don't know. I mean, I see all the news on Canada that they show down here, but I don't know about the COVID response. But I know for a stimulus plan. But I know down here on Dental Town, one of the biggest problems is trying to find employees. I mean, when you send out $1 trillion the first time and another, I mean, and then the other thing that I think people are discounting is that a lot of us were just on the rat wheel. Like take me, and probably Sam could say the same thing. I mean, I lectured 32 to 64 times a year from 1990 to 30 years, 1,000 cities, 50 countries.
Wow.
And it took a pandemic to get me off that rat wheel. And now that it's opening back up, everybody's calling to come back and speaking. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I can talk to 100 times as many people right now on a podcast. I'm not getting in an airplane and sleeping in a Holiday Inn to talk to 200 people for any amount of money. But the bottom line is, I think a lot of people, they were the American family. They had the 2 cars, 2 jobs, 2 this, then COVID. Then they started realizing, well, we don't need 2 cars. We just need 1. We don't have to go to restaurants. We don't have to live like this. And a lot of Americans, and I'm thinking it's like damn near 15%, are thinking, I don't think I'm going to go back to that rat race. Yeah. And right now, the big Fortune 500, one of their biggest HR issues is they're saying, look, figure out how I can work from home or take my notice. Here's my notice. Here's my 2-week notice. So it's all yours, Samantha. Figure it out, or I'm out of here. And so what are you seeing that in Canada?
Yeah, I think COVID really, like you were saying, I think it really made us reflect internally and external. Like, do I love what I'm doing? Do I love who I work with? Do I love, dentistry still? And I think it really helped. It made people hit that reset button to really reevaluate their life. And a lot of people discovered that they didn't want to work in dentistry anymore. So we had a percentage of the market who didn't want to come back to dentistry, who liked staying at home and spending time with their family, who wanted to just have this reset button to do what they wanted to do and be passionate about it, which is great. But then we also have a mixture of people who are still loving what they do, but maybe they don't love who they work with anymore. And so it's that reevaluation period that we need to also adapt with that limited pool within the job market, but then also how are we attracting them? Because now with this small candidate pool, but a lot of openings, we have for every probably one assistant, we probably have like 100 job openings who are looking for that same great rock star dental assistant. So what are we doing to be able to attract them to want to apply into our position? And it's a crazy, you'll have to look up that stat for me, but basically I think it's 70% of millennials are using social media now to be able to decide if they want to apply to a position or not. So people are using the same buying decisions that they are using to book book a hotel when they're traveling or choose a restaurant. They're going to look at the website, they're going to look at their social media, and they're going to look at their Google reviews. And the exact same thing is happening right now for job seekers. So if I was somebody who was looking for my next dream job and I'm a A+ player and employee, I'm looking for that next great opportunity. If I come onto the website, and do I see a great team culture? Do I see a mission or vision that I can resonate with? When I look on social media, do I see a ton of stock photos, or am I seeing a great team and a great employer who really supports and appreciates their team and does fun things with them and invests in their personal and professional growth and development? Or do I see constant employee turnover and different faces all the time, and I see their name come up all the time on job advertisements? Or do I go onto Google reviews and I see that maybe they only have 1 star and all of the complaints are because the doctor's mean or the team this or that? Does that make me want to apply to a position? No. So this is where we need to really shift the way that we come and are doing our recruitment now. What worked in 2019 of just putting a job ad up there and just waiting for the right resumes to come and get a flood of it is not happening anymore. What used to take 2 weeks to fill a position is now taking 2 or 4 months to fill a position. So practices really need to adapt and have a good HR strategy to be able to recruit and onboard great team members to keep that culture growing and their business and their patient happy.
And just so you know, HR, just so you know where your ship is sailing from, the turnover in the United States from The Economist, they say that the average is 22% a year. Voluntary is 15%. Involuntary is 6%, with retirement only accounting for 1%. So every time, 6%, 6 out of 100 are getting fired. And that's the other thing economists have always agreed with, that, it seems like the unemployment rate of 5% kind of works really well. So it's kind of math that on any given day, probably 1 out of 20 people shouldn't be employed wherever the hell they're working. And you see the involuntary turnout rate accounts for 6%. But when unemployment gets to 10%, now it's a damn depression and everybody's freaking out and all that kind of stuff. But do you think doctors are slow to hire and fast to fire when they know they're toxic and bad? Or do you think they're not fast to fire? I mean, when you know someone is a C, D, or F player, and you know that you're not going to win the Stanley Cup with C players on your team, let alone D's and F's, do you think they recognize that and terminate that dysfunctional player quickly? Or do you think they let it burn on and on and on?
I've seen both scenarios. I've seen scenarios where people hire really fast. And that, again, goes to, I don't have the right hiring structure. I'm not asking the right questions. I don't really know who the ideal person is and what the type of person I need to perform these roles and responsibilities. So then I'm hiring somebody who watches the same shows as I do, reads the same book as I do on Netflix or, on Audible or what have you. So then we're hiring based off of not the right structure. And then we're not setting them up for success when we're onboarding them. So we're throwing them into the deep end on day 1, and we expect them to turn into an Olympic swimmer by day 2. But we haven't supported them to be able to do that. We haven't given them the right training or the resources. And 20% of turnover happens within their first 45 days. So if that is broken, up until their 90-day probationary period. Sometimes what happens is practice owners, again, we all get super busy. We're trying to grow the business. We're trying to take care of patients. We kind of brush underneath the rug some issues that are starting to show up, some red flags, because we don't want to go through this again. I don't want to have to lay somebody off and then spend weeks and all my hours trying to be able to do this all over again. And now I spent a third of that person's salary just trying to fill this position to begin with. And now I'm back at square one. So sometimes a lot of practice owners just kind of, just brush it underneath the rug until all of a sudden that rug is now like this huge mountain and we can't ignore it. But it's already created so much damage within our culture and within our business and our team dynamics. So that's why it's super important that when you know who I need to hire, how I'm going to hire them, how am I going to integrate them properly, what the right fit looks like within this organization, where we're growing in the trajectory path of this position and within our business, then it's much easier to be able to identify that person much sooner, identify those red flags faster, and be able to terminate them because we've got the right policies and processes in place. So I think that's where that sometimes where we see that disconnect or of people not being able to say, find your happiness somewhere else. This isn't the right place, when we don't really know, is this the right person for this place right now and where we need to go.
You and Sam made the news. My gosh, just November of last year, so that was just 5 or 6 months ago. Calgary dental HR firm enters agreement with global dental supplier to provide HR management services. It says, with business everywhere struggling to keep their doors open, one small firm has big reasons to celebrate. Stream Dental Staffing Solutions Ltd, aka Stream Dental HR, and Henry Schein Canada, a wholly owned subsidiary of Schein, have entered into agreement for Stream Dental HR to be Henry Schein's provider of strategic human resource management services. And who is this? You say, we are thrilled to have the opportunity to serve Henry Schein's customers and to be part of the innovation solutions they provide. Henry Schein has a stellar reputation worldwide, and this agreement recognizes Stream Dental HR as a leader in HR services for dental and medical offices, says Samantha Leonard, co-founder and CEO of the company. So it's been half a year. How is it a half a year later?
I know. It's crazy how things have flown by in 6 months, eh? But it's really great. We've been able to really support a lot of practices together. With Henry Schein, we did a lot of workshops and trainings and seminars to be able to support practice owners to help them recover, restore operations, and to put all the health and safety regulations that are now have changed where we are. So it's been great to be able to work with Henry Schein and help as many practices as possible during these really difficult times.
And does Schein have a dog in this HR, in the DSO space, do you think?
In what way? What do you mean?
Well, do you think they will, none of the DSOs can do an IPO because they grow with debt. They just buy earnings, all they're doing. They have, they want to build a $100 million company, so they go raise $100 million and they buy $1 million dental offices. And they say, oh, we went from 0 to 100 million. It's like, yeah, but so did your debt sheet. Yeah. So then the operations issues come in. You say, well, what's your operation efficiencies? What did it value? Most of it is renegotiating insurance contracts. And that's so obviously the insurance companies are a big part of the DSO growth and the specialty markets growth, because they'll give a endodontist twice as much money for a molar root canal than a general dentist. And a lawyer's not going to sue an endodontist because it doesn't work that way. They sue a general dentist for being able to prove he didn't do it the same way as a specialist, as an endodontist. So so if you're a private equity firm and you got to unload something and you can't find, it's a hot potato, a small private equity firm starts it, and then their 5-year turn to their investors, they got to flip it to a bigger private equity, and then the private equity is a bigger one. Like take Heartland Dental. It's the biggest one in America. The first exit strategy was a Canadian teachers pension plan, and then when they wanted to flip it, it went to KKR, which is the biggest. So the only thing after that is to do an IPO, and Schein's publicly traded. They could buy DSOs because they're already a publicly traded vehicle. Do you think that they may be doing that, or not so much?
I'm not too sure. I can't really speak on that aspect, but I think what you were mentioning about um, a lot of these PEG groups that are investing because they see the giant growth in dentistry, and dentistry provides a great ROI. And I think that's a great lesson for all of us to really see that there is opportunity for growth. There is opportunity. There is enough patients for all of us to be successful and to succeed. And so it's really making sure the business strategy is there, the growth plan is there, the right people are there, and that are really going to help this, any practice succeed, regardless if they're a startup, if they've got, maybe they're wanting to turn into a group practice, turn into a DSO or a larger DSO to continue to grow. And I think a lot of practices as well, the reason why they start working with DSOs or think about selling their practice to DSOs is because they have a tough time really managing the people side. They have a tough time managing the business side while trying to work on teeth. And so if there's other support systems out there to be able to help them on that business side, I think that's really going to help practice owners be able to sleep at night, be able to help grow and make an impact, and really help their community out and really have a thriving business.
So one of the where the rubber hits the mat is they're always thinking incentives matter. And I mean, economics is just filled with 200 years of observations and data and models that incentives matter. It's just clear. I mean, not to get political, but when I think it was when I was in college, the Soviet Union centrally planned economy, with as much open grain fields to work as Canada, the United States. They had to import grain because of a centrally planned economy. Their people couldn't even make enough grain to feed themselves. And with America, where everybody owned their own farm, wasn't told by somebody 1,000 miles away what to plant and all that kind of stuff, we were a major exporter. And when you look at these economic that incentives matter, it always goes back to the hygienist question. Should I pay her salary or commission? Or same thing with staff. They're always thinking, well, isn't the deal breaker in HR to be the bonus plan? Well, you're not. There's nothing you can do with the toxic person. Okay, there's no plan. The only reason toxic people are alive is because it's actually illegal to shoot them. You even need a permit to shoot a moose or a bear or an elk, but you can't get a permit to shoot a toxic person. But what are your views on hygienist pay, hourly salary? Is the bonus system the miracle that everyone's been looking for? And is that the secret? Is just the ultimate bonus system? What are your thoughts on that?
I would definitely say it really depends on what the practice needs, right? So for example, for a practice right now, maybe they aren't able to utilize bonus plans, or maybe they're not able to give people increases like they normally would because of the way that the economy is. But there is a way for us to still utilize and put together some growth strategies when we all know, okay, this is how many patients I need to see each month. This is the conversion rate that we're looking for. Here's what our AR percentage should look like. So when we actually have those benchmarkers and we have those key performing indicators, and we communicate with our team, this is not only your roles and responsibilities, but here's how we're going to measure. And this is what success looks like within these roles. These are the metrics and the benchmarks that we're going to be measuring and monitoring. So in that way, that really helps that team member understand, okay, my focus is making sure that we're producing this much a day. So if there is a vacancy, if there is a hole in that schedule, I'm going to hop on that and I'm going to try and fill it as quickly as possible. So we're reaching that quota. So if that practice owner hasn't communicated what that expectation is, then we're basically that person's, definition is, well, you saw 10 other patients and we just had one hole. I think that I did my job. Right. So if we're not communicating that in that way of what we're measuring and monitoring, then it's really hard to be able to help that person perform at a level that the business requires. So if the business is at a point where you're able to provide like some type of incentives, whether that's profit sharing, whether that's a bonus plan, whether that's commission, and whether they get like a percentage off of maybe every treatment that they upsell, like that's where the practice really needs to know their numbers first and foremost. Because I've seen a lot of practices that have put these bonus plans plans in place and have had to take money out of their own pocket to be able to pay people. So if you don't have that, know your numbers and know what the business needs, not only in the next 3 months, but in the next 6 months, in the next year, first know that direction before you start putting some bonus plans in place, because we've seen a lot of those kind of fizzle out very quickly, or really kind of work in the opposite direction and do more harm than good.
Back to the leadership role. I mean, can these doctors can they lead? I always go to a football analogy, because I've actually have wasted more time watching the NFL than I ever care to admit. I can never make fun of someone lazy, crazy, whatever, because I would just love to have all those hours back. I could probably be a brain surgeon on the side. But the one thing that reminds me of good leadership is that the best quarterbacks in the world, what people don't ever talk about when they're watching the game on Brady and all those people, is how consistent they are.
Mhm.
If you want to be a leader in a dental office, like I was saying, you show up, you're the same person every day. The rules that applied Monday apply Tuesday. These are the rules, and the lineman can block that quarterback, because when he says, "I'm going to unload this thing in 3 seconds," you just got to hang on to that Godzilla for 3 seconds, and then you let go, and the quarterback knows that you're letting go, so he rolls out, and everybody's on the same page. It's just drill consistency, and then you look at leadership. And one day Dennis wants to take him to a bar after work, and everybody gets drunk and pukes and gets crazy. Then the next day he wants them to act like they're in church school during a staff meeting, pouring over a manual system. They just one day he's in a good mood, and whatever you say, it's funny. The next day you say the same joke, and now he's pissed off. Consistency is everything. But my question to you is, do you think leaders are just born? They're just lucky, they're like tall, dark, and handsome people? Or do you think that you can take someone who's a geometry major and get them a book or train them to be a leader, an effective leader in a dental organization? Or would your advice be, look, Dr. Algebra, you need to hire an office manager, and you need to delegate to the office manager. She's going to run the place. And when the staff asks you a question, let them ask in full. They always feel better when they vent. When someone's venting on you, please don't ever stop them, because they're about to have a dopamine dump. And if you interrupt them, they're going to double down, and it's going to, so let them have their dopamine dump. And then you see they're relaxed, and they take a deep breath, and you say, wow, well, what did the office manager say? And, that consistency. So can it be taught, or are you just born lucky?
I think everybody has that leadership possibility within. We just need to be able to really understand human connection. We need to understand, how can I relate to somebody else? I need to understand that as a leader, if I'm asking a team member, how are you doing today? I need to prepare for one of two options. Either they're going to say really great, or they're going to say, this is real. I'm having the worst day of my life. This is happening, blah, 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 blah. So you need to be able to turn on that supportive hat, turn on that leadership hat, turn on manager hat. It's important to make sure that the CEO, the owner, that leadership, that has to be there. Even if you have an office manager who's maybe going to be doing more of that hands-on leadership, performance evaluations, training, and things like that for the new hire, it still needs to go back, or else you're going to have that whole divorce mom and dad situation. I'm going to go to the office manager to ask for this. If I don't get that, then I'm going to go to the doc, because I know the doc will do it, right? We need to be on that same page, that same leadership style together, or else we're going to have that divided culture as well within our practice. So, two parts to that is really, we may not be born as a leader, come out of the box, and we're ready to be, that next whoever leader, or be like, what's his name now? Anyways, the kind of having that person who is that natural born leader that can have somebody else do whatever they need to do and just be a great rock star person. We need to be able to adapt. We need to be able to learn those skills. We need to learn communication, learn how to be able to understand other people, and learn the direction and the vision of the practice. And then being able to put together an office manager who can then help integrate, implement, and support our team to be able to make sure that that is happening on a daily basis, right? So it's a twofold effect. But first of all, it's most important that the leader has to start with the owner.
Whenever you have a weak leader, and again, I think Abraham Maslow was my hero on management, because when you're dealing with Sapien, everybody always wants to disconnect and go to Disney and fantasy and Disney. There's 59 Disney movies. I turned 59 this year. This year I'll be as old. 1 year for every Disney movie, and they go straight to Disney. They disconnect from reality, and I have to be tied into my training of math, physics, chemistry, biology. I mean, let's start with HR, at least at the level of Sapien, anthropology, something. And when somebody can't, social herd animals are designed to not confront each other and to just follow the 800-pound gorilla. And so then when the more aggressive hygienist comes in there every time the Earth goes all the way around the sun one time and passes the planet Uranus, says, I need another dollar because I just passed Uranus. And he's like, oh, okay. And then this goes on year after year after year, and the next thing you know, his payroll staff overhead is off the charts. He's losing profitability, and that's why a lot of DSOs stopped doing mergers and acquisitions and start doing de novos, because I would rather start all the employees with a job description that says, you know what, you answer the damn phone, and here's the pay range for answering the damn phone. It's $15 to $22 an hour. If you ever think you're going to make 23 for any reason, you need to go back to hygiene school, to dental school, or, and nobody has a problem, because satisfaction equals perception of my wages minus what I expected. They don't do any of this stuff. The staff thinks it's astrology city. Every time the Earth flies around the sun, we get more money. How do you balance their unlimited needs, wants, and desires versus the profitability? Warren Buffett just had his annual meeting Saturday. That's the most glorious day of the year for me. I mean, it's a 5.5-hour meeting. You're just listening to 90-year-old Warren and 97-year-old Charlie Munger. And it's like listening to Beethoven and Bach for 5 hours. And he always says, never go into an industry that has high capital cost and someone else sets the fee. Well, that's healthcare. The government, all the insurance companies set the fee, and it's extremely high tech with CBCTs and lasers. Warren Buffett wouldn't touch a dental office if you put a gun to his head. And it's one of the reasons why there's not one publicly traded DSO in America. There's not one. And you never hear people questioning their model when they're not even liquid, because no one's going to take that paper corporate stock and turn it into US dollars. And so how do you balance this person is like, oh, the easiest way to get Samantha out of my office right now is just to give her another dollar. Samantha, take the dollar. Just please shut the door on the way out. And now you're looking at labor that's 30%.
Yeah. Okay. First thing, you need to make sure that your policy, when it comes to salary increases, is not associated with performance reviews. So in that way, we are essentially saying that when we're doing an annual performance review, or maybe that's every 6 months, that doesn't mean that you're going to get a raise. Here's what raises are based off of. And like you said, having that structure of having that pay, ranges. So in that way, they understand that, hey, I'm at level 1, I'm starting off as a new grad. These are the roles and responsibilities that I can perform, but I know once I get faster, or once I hit these benchmarks, or once I can manage, take on this new role and responsibility, then I'm going to be eligible for this addition, that next pay grade, or that next increase. So really having that clearly communicated, that function, those roles and responsibilities is first and foremost. Having that policy, having those job descriptions, and then a practice owner should be doing every single year. This should be a part of almost like their business planning or New Year's resolution. When we're looking at the business and planning, making our plan for the year, we need to do a deep dive into our wage and our job analysis. So if we're looking through our job descriptions and we're seeing, okay, right now there's a list of 25 tasks, and Susie only can handle, or she's so busy doing these 10 items that all the rest of these 15 items aren't happening. And these are the 15 things that are going to help us produce some income. So how do I rearrange this so in that way we make sure that 15 that's priority, and then the other 10 we can either see if we're outsourcing, we're automating, or we're delegating to somebody else, and making sure that that person is doing the right things that's going to produce that money for our company, so that our wage isn't increasing, our expenses are increasing, but our revenue isn't increasing. So we constantly need to do that job analysis. Then at the same time, we also need to look at and see what the wage is within our area. So if we're doing a wage analysis within the city, within that specific role, and we're starting to see that, hey, maybe we haven't given this person a raise and we're actually paying them below what our market average is right now in our area. So it's really important to make sure that that's actually built into our business plan, built into our business strategy, and then pre-built into our communication and our expectations when it comes to our policies for performance evaluations and salary increases. But I am with you. I believe that a practice owner needs to have, for lack of a better word, that leverage to understand that within their business. So in that way, they're not actually continuing to give increases because they feel like they're held hostage. When you have that information and when it's clearly communicated and we're doing those performance reviews and those job analysis, we're able to see if this is working or if this isn't working.
I can't believe we went over an hour. My God, we went over an hour, and I still have more questions. Can I keep you on a little longer?
Yeah. Let's keep going.
Back to turnover. I like to look at industry segments. Again, this is just millennials, but I'm talking about dental school because it's May 5th. In the next month, 56 schools in the United States are going to dump out another 6,000 kids on the market, and they're all going to go out looking for a job. But the millennial turnover rate, even at the biggest companies, Facebook, Amazon, Uber, Microsoft, I mean, they only last 1 to 2 years. I mean, you can be giving them everything they want at Google and foosball tables and free lunches and lattes and coffees. And after a year of them programming, someone comes over from Uber and says, hey, you want to do a driverless car? Or they get on board. I mean, you just can't keep them in one place. So it's, I think it's one of the absolute reasons why the DSOs wrote off half of America to the rural. They're not going to the rural. They spent a decade with, on any given day, 10% of their rural offices didn't even have a doc in the box. Docs don't want to live there. They've delayed getting married like they did in 1950. From 1950 to 2020, in that 70 years, they're getting married about a decade later, having half the number of kids, and no one wants to look for a mate in Parsons, Kansas, but they'll go to Kansas City. And so, I mean, it's hard to build value, your brand. I mean, a brand is built on consistency. We talk about what's the difference between the richest countries and the poorest countries. It's stability. That's the same thing, your brand. Every time I come here, it's the same dentist, the same hygienist, the same assistant. So when you tell me something, I have no idea if it's true or not, that I have a cavity, I trust you because I don't know if I have a cavity or not. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but I know I trust you guys. It's brand consistency.
Yeah.
And how do you have brand consistency on these dentist associates when their turnover is through the roof? What do you think the average dentist turnover rate is from your decades in this industry? How long do you think on average they stay?
Probably 2 to 3 years.
And that would be long. I mean, I think that would be long. I mean, it seems like everyone I meet, if they've been out of school 5 years, that's how many jobs they've had. They've had 5 jobs in 5 years. Maybe one of them was 2 to 3 years, but then the other 3 were, 8 months. Any thoughts? Can you find, and I cringe asking you this question because, in this Me Too movement, it sounds so feminine, but there is a difference between boys and girls, and if you don't know that, just go back to your biology class and Google gametes. Gametes. There's if you just follow the gametes, you'll see them divide in half. That's meiosis, where the DNA pulls in half, and one goes down the female side and one goes down the male side, and they reunite and incubate. And it looks like the DSOs, 2 out of 3 of their employees are women. And then when you look at the marketability, building a brand, who looks like they're going to hurt you more, me or Samantha? I mean, if I was afraid, well, I would run to you and I would run away from me. I saw that with my 4 kids. They were all boys. I was dad until they got a boo-boo and an owie and cut. And then they'd run all the way around me to get to mom. And so, and women make 85% of all appointments. And we know they ask twice as many questions to a woman dentist as they do a male dentist. If a male dentist says you need a cavity, and they might be thinking something, but if it's a female or a non-threatening, they just unload. Being a woman in HR for decades, and the fact that DSOs, 2 out of 3 of them are women in there, do you think a woman, if you're looking for a dental associate, would you just try to fill up all your seats with women first and only take the bald, old, fat guys if there's nothing left on the vine?
I mean, you've raised some very interesting points. I would say that I want to go back to what you were talking about for branding, because I think a lot of times we think about branding just to use it for marketing, right? To attract new patients. But when we're applying those same principles, we can actually use that as our employer branding strategy. So we're making sure that we're attracting great qualified employees. And I've seen this time and time again when we're working with practices and we help them create their employer branding strategy before it's time to start recruiting. They actually have way more applicants and people who have that interpersonal skill set, are in alignment with their why, their vision, the impact that the practice is looking at making. And you're able to find people who are like that. And I'm a millennial, and we're attracted to the why very much. I've, in my 15 years of being in dentistry, I've only worked for 3 people. And one of them was my first job as a dental assistant. The second was Dr. Dar. And now I'm a partner with Dr. Dar, and we have this company together. So for me, it's very much attracted to the impact, the why. Am I going to work every single day and loving what I'm doing? Am I making an impact? Is it rewarding and satisfying? And if an employer can provide those needs and wants and have a shared outcome, then our retention is much, much greater, and we're seeing less and less people turn over. So I feel like that disconnect with, and I think millennials get a bad rap because of this, but it's really that desire, that impact, that why is what's going to cause people to, join a position. They see that, hey, we're actually not in alignment. This isn't really making me happy. I'm spending more time working with you knee to knee as a dental assistant than I am spending with my own husband or my family. So I want to make sure that I have fun and I love coming to work every single day. And if I'm not getting that, then I'm going to try and find that somewhere else, because I'm not going to jump from one sinking ship to another and bring all that stress and that drama. I want to make sure that I love what I do. And that same thing, a lot of people are looking for going beyond working with an employer that goes beyond just drilling, billing, and filling. If I'm working for a practice who's involved in the community, giving back to charity, doing XYZ for giving back to those in need, then that's also going to be a deciding factor for me as well, because I want to do things that are beyond the 4 walls of my operatory. I want to go to work every single day and feel like I'm actually doing something. So I think that's really where you'll see, and you'll find that more and more people, millennials, are staying with positions longer when they feel that all of those checklists and those items on those checklists to give them fulfillment and satisfaction are being met.
So I want to ask you on the ground. A lot of dentists keep asking me to ask the guests from the ground where you're at. You're in Alberta, Canada. For your school geometry, it's just straight up north. I mean, it's just straight north. It's about 1,200 miles straight north. I know from my house to Michael Zuck's house up in Edmonton, and I've driven it. It's the craziest, most beautiful scenic
Hmm.
drive ever. How does coronavirus look on the ground to you? Do you see that you're over the hump, you're going down, light at the end of the tunnel, and you'll be sliding into home plate here by the end of the year? Or does it still look like we're in the middle of a pandemic?
Where we're at right now, at this point in time here in Calgary, Alberta has, I think they were saying yesterday in the news, per capita is actually worse than the numbers that are coming from India right now. So we, unfortunately, our third wave has really impacted us. And it almost feels like we've just traveled back in time to when this first broke out back in March. So it has definitely impacted a lot within our within our economy. A lot of people still aren't working. We don't have you can't go and sit down in restaurants anymore. It's definitely a different environment here, and a lot of people are dealing with that stress, and it's just compounded over a year. And so I think a lot of practice owners are not only dealing with you know the fear of the increase of this pandemic and the cases, but then also their team are dealing with just burnout. The mental wellness of our team members are starting to go down. And so we really need to shift and really support one another and help each other and really look at beyond just what we're going through right now, because eventually this will be a blimp in time. A year or two will pass, 5 years, 10 years, and all of a sudden this will be like a thing of the past. So I think we all need to kind of remember that we're going to get through this. We will get through this, but we just need to support one another, be kind with one another, and help our team out when it comes to these really stressful times. But it is unfortunately probably going to be a little bit longer for us here in this area. We're starting to get vaccinated, and probably will be another 6 months, maybe, hopefully, before we can kind of come to the other side, so to speak.
Tough pandemic. Your website is streamdentaLhr.com.
Correct.
So Stream Dental. By the way, where does Stream come from? Where's Stream Dental? Are you a trout fisherman from Alberta? Is that where that is, or?
No, the word stream really came from us helping practices streamline their HR, helping them really manage their human capital. So it's almost kind of like just as peaceful as a stream of water, all
Nice.
moving in the right direction.
And for my homies listening to you right now, if they go to Stream, by the way, I like to talk about names because I think it helps remember them. Whenever you meet a new patient, when you walk out of the room, like the first thing I said to you, it was Samantha Leonard, and the first thing I thought is Samantha Leopard. And because I thought Samantha Leopard, and I see Samantha dressed up in a leopard coat, I'll remember that easier, Samantha Leonard, and it's monomics. And so when I talk about why you named it Stream, you talked about Streamline HR. You'll remember her website, Stream Dental HR. And damn it, guys, don't use pronouns like he, she, it, your, things like that when you're talking to a patient, or you're never going to remember the name. I mean, get the name that you're going to call this person. What do you like to be called? What's your mama call you, whatever. And if his name's Billy Bob, then if you look at him in the eyes and say Billy Bob 3 or 4 times, and you walk in there before the hygiene check, it's a lot easier to remember the names, and that's where everybody wants to go, where everybody knows their names. They don't know when you say they have 4 cavities. They can't look at the x-rays. When you educate people on the x-rays, you have no idea. They're just following you. I could show them a Panorex with 2 mental foramens, tell them they're both cysts that are cancerous and need to be removed, and it's just an anatomical mental foramen exit. So the bottom line is, talk clearly, words you can understand, get habits of this. But my homies, if they go to Stream for Streamline, Stream Dental HR, what are they going to find? And what are the things you're selling? What are people hiring you to do when they go to your website, streamdentalhr.com?
Well, we help support practices when it comes to putting that successful formula together of people plus processes equals profit. So we want to help practices help not only take care of the HR side and the compliance piece, but it's also going to help them build a great team that love coming to work every single day. And in turn, dentists love coming to work every single day and can focus on what they do. So we help practices build their entire HR department, including their employee handbook. But to us, like we were talking about today, HR is much more than just a handbook. So it's making sure that you have all the pieces that you need to find the right people, put them in the right seats. They know what they're doing at the right times, and then just helping that practice grow. We also help them support them when it comes to health and safety. We've expanded that service and are going to continue to expand it to help now when it comes to infection prevention control, just because these, again, are part of our new norm and are taking a lot of time away from practice owners to do themselves. So we can help them with their people, their processes. We do team workshops. We do recruitment. We even help them when it comes to buying and selling their practice. We help them make sure that they're getting top dollar when it comes to selling their practice, because if it's compliant, that's more attractive to a buyer. And if they are looking at buying a practice, they also need to understand who their team that they're inheriting is. What's their personality type? What do they have in terms of compensation and benefits? So in that way, they make sure that the investment that they're making is the right investment, and everything's protected, and they're going to get a good ROI on that. So basically, anything about people, anything about policies and processes.
I was very impressed that you got an endorsement on your website from Dr. Glenn Vo, who's been on the show. He's the co-founder of Nifty Thrifty Dentist. He's a big townie. Love that guy. He's just so innovative. And he says, Stream HQ has been a godsend to my practice. How much money did you have to pay Glenn to get him to say that? Was it more than $1 million?
No, he is a wonderful, wonderful man and dentist, and he's just done so many great things like yourself to help our industry out.
Well, it's an honor to be in a compliment in the same league as him. My gosh, I'm trying to think, was there any other thing? Gosh, are there any either anything else that you thought we would talk about that we didn't, or are there any good one-liners and idioms that are used in dentistry that you would sum up to get their HR in order? I mean, mine is this. Mine is this. I've said this forever. If you were to look at an anthill and say, "Oh, well, see that ant over here? That one's smarter than this one over here, and that one's dumb, and that one's going the wrong way," or to do it with cockroaches or dolphins. I mean, you've never seen a pot of dolphins say, "Notice how the one on the far right's a genius, and that one on the left looks like she had a head injury." I mean, we all have the same iPhone. We have one of the least genetic variances of any species recorded. I mean, it's a very tight model. So when you're not good at something, it's usually because you don't like it, so you don't spend your 10,000 hours, so it's like a cat chasing its tail. You don't like it, so you don't invest time, read books, you're not motivated, you don't dream about it, and then you suck at it. And then I'll go into an office, and Doc's been there 10 years, and no staff's been there for 2 years, and he complained about staff turnover, and I'm like, well, who interviewed and hired all these people? Me? Okay, well, you have 10 years of data that says you really suck at this. So did you have a brain tumor? Did they cut out your medulla oblongata? How did you get through dental school? Yeah, and how did you figure out calculus and you can't figure out HR? And it's because they don't like it. I tell everybody, my friend that practiced across the street from me, he used to say that he'd rather be taken in the backyard and beat with a belt than do a root canal. And I said, Bob, they have endodontists. There's people that'll do that shit. You don't have to do it. And I see some of the best well-run offices in the world because the doctor just admitted, look, I hate this. I suck at being a leadership. I can't stand up to people. And my wife does it perfectly. And I just go in and do the dentistry, and she runs the whole damn office, and it's $1.5 million office a year. I mean, I just don't understand why people don't associate that the reason they haven't mastered something by putting in their 10,000 hours is because they don't like it. I mean, it's like when I go to a rodeo, I only like the bull riding. I don't want to watch any of the other events. So you're a perfect solution for that. If your spouse is staying home raising kids, and that's more important. By the way, on the staff, the wife running the front office, the first line. I'll just pull her into the room, shut the door, and say, "Hey, do you love this job? Do you eat, live, breathe, die, and shit this job and love it more than anything?" And she says, "Hell no, I hate this job. I want to be home with my babies. They're in date." And I'm like, oh my God. So the office is being run by someone who hates her job. How many red flags do you need? And so, Doc, if your wife doesn't want to do it, you can't afford to have her in there. You're not saving her any money by having a crippled practice. You're missing out on the opportunity cost of growth. If you don't like it, delegate it. I'm not going to become a pediatric dentist unless it's the last job on earth, and then I'd still contemplate starving to death. So if you don't like HR, here's Samantha will do it all for you. So just tell them, finish this up. Tell them, how does it work? They want to know the cost. They want to know the money. How does this work? I go to Streamline Dental HR because I hate all people. And then what do we do from there?
You've got some great one-liners. I love them. So basically, they would just contact us. We do an HR strategy meeting. So we really identify what's their immediate HR needs, where they want to take their business, and then being able to see how can we support them on that? And then we start building their HR around that, and helping them when it comes to anything that they need. So if they're looking to, maybe the doc identifies that, hey, I'm not a great leader. I love dentistry way more, but I understand that I do need a leader. So help me find an office manager, help me find a regional, help me find an ops, whatever. We go in and support them to be able to help them find that right person, and then providing all the necessary resource and support systems to help set them up for success. So our goal is really HR. And the biggest thing that I want them to take away is HR is much more than a handbook. It's about managing the biggest resource and asset in your business, which is your human capital.
And Sam, the other co-founder, Sam Daher, do I pronounce it right? Daher?
Daher, yep.
Daher. When he's yelling at you in French, how do you write it up if you don't know French? You only know English. He's bilingual. How do you know what he's saying to you when he's cussing you out in French?
I usually just smile and nod, and we just find a solution to move on. But he has been the best mentor I have ever had, and he never yelled at me. He helped lead me and encourage me, and provided the training that I needed to really jump from dental assistant to ops manager, and now a business partner with him. So I attest to a lot of the growth and success that we had because of his great leadership.
Well, I love him to death, and he's done a lot for dentistry.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable man. But thank you so much for spending an hour with me and my homies, and for all things HR. And I hope you finish out this pandemic and get your vaccinations, and all goes well. These are strange times. So thanks for coming on the show, and you have a great day.
That was fun.
Okay, bye-bye.